Here we are back in Washington Square Park. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon as opposed to 12 noon. This is much, much easier to use. And you might say, well, why the hell are you out there shooting at 2 o'clock? Well, quite frankly, there are times of day that we can't avoid. If you remember what I was talking about earlier, sometimes we can't pick our times of day. If the ceremony is at, what time's your ceremony? Your ceremony.
6.
Yeah. So she might have a 6 o'clock ceremony, and we want to get our family photos out of the way. We want to get their photos out of the way because she has a ceremony at 6 o'clock that's immediately followed by a cocktail hour. It's going to be virtually impossible for us to get all the necessary photos of her family, the two of them, all the bridal party, immediately following the ceremony. So what I like to do, and I started this back in 2000, is this reveal process. I had a bride in 2000 that she said, Cliff, I love all the photos that you do. I really can't wait, blah, blah, blah. What time's your ceremony? It's 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock. It's November. 5 o'clock in November. Your ceremony starts at 5 o'clock in November. How the hell do you think I'm going to take pictures of course I didn't say that to my client, but the thought was there. So my thought was, well, what if we do this? What if you saw one another for the first time in a great way before your ceremony? This was the first time that I've ever done it. And the way I explained it to my client was that the integrity of that magic moment will still be intact. We're still going to be able to have the two of you have that amazing intimacy that you would ordinarily when you're seeing each other for the first time walking down the aisle. So what I proposed to her is to take her to an area, set the stage for the moment to take place, have her waiting, sort of lying in wait, and have the groom follow suit and have them see each other for the first time in a great fashion. Well, she loved the idea. She, of course, had to BS her parents a little bit. We finagled it, we made it work, and that sort of evolved into what I do today. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how I have couples see one another for the first time. But before I do that, I have to explain how this groundwork is put in place. I don't just on the wedding day say, oh, you ready to go see Sammy? Well, that's not going to work. You have to lay groundwork. Laying groundwork with mom is just as important as laying groundwork with our bride. From the initial consultation, when I first meet the client, I'm explaining to these people, hey, your ceremony is immediately followed by a cocktail hour. Do you think you'd like to see him beforehand if we did this? And by this I mean I show them photos of couples seeing one another for the first time. They get a feel, they can experience, they can almost taste the emotion, the sincerity of the moment when couples see one another for the first time on their wedding day. It is magic. It is exciting. And I also tell them that there's a benefit because really, you're not going to have 200 pairs of eyes on you when it's actually taking place. They get excited, they approve it. That's the groundwork. There's more groundwork. I need to earn mom's trust. I can't take out the, expensive wedding gown without explaining to her that things are going to take place and I'm going to take care of the gown. I even do so much, and Sarah's holding the gown, great. But I even go so far as to show the bride, and she's already doing it, how to hold the gown. I'll have her take the gown, placing it over the crook of her arm, giving it a little pinch here, and actually hold it sort of more like this here, almost like a ballerina. And just, there you go. Now I tell her, you look like a bride. And that's the way you should look. And it also, by the way, gives the bride something to do with her hands instead of her standing like this. This is a lot more elegant than this. She's a lot more comfortable in her skin like this than she is this. So on the actual wedding day itself, after we do our getting ready photographs, details and the gown and all this other stuff which I've covered in other lessons, I take her in my vehicle and I bring her to Washington Square Park. Well, it is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and a little earlier we did 12 o'clock. The sun is a little lower in the sky now, just a little bit, but now it's even easier to work with. The same rule still applies. I'm going to put my subject between me and the sun. I'm going to talk about my exposures. It may have changed a little bit because of what's going to be in my frame. I'm going to explain that in a minute. The first thing that I'm going to do is take a look for where I'm going to set the stage for the moment to take place. Now, I know this park pretty well, and I know right now that the sun is in a great spot. It's right up a little chute where I can have my bride, a beautiful dark urban-scaped background where I'm going to place her, and then I'm going to completely lie to my client. I'm going to tell her that the groom is coming from a completely other direction. And that's when the magic happens. I hope you watch, I hope you listen, I hope you learn, and I hope that you can do this for your clients. So here we go, all right? I'm already seeing that this light over here in this area is gorgeous. And Sarah, all I'd like you to do is from the middle area here, just try to stay in the middle. And I want you to take a nice slow walk right down the little alleyway there, okay? And just nice and slow. What I'm doing at this point, I'm just trying to get my exposure value straightened out. I also love the light on Sarah, okay? What do you know, I pretty much nailed it. I'm at a 500th of 2.8 at ISO 200. I'll even get down a little bit lower here. Good. And now she's just chilling. I'm making these beautiful photographs. We've just gotten a little bit more light, and every once in a while I'll notice the light changing. So I'm going to recheck my LCD. Sarah's just doing her thing. She's looking in all different directions. Okay, what I'm going to do now, I've already got my exposure value. I'm in manual exposure mode, mainly because I know that this exposure reading right here, a 6/40th at 2.8 at 200, is going to allow me to nail my exposures each and every time because the conditions really aren't changing. If I notice them changing, I'm going to adjust. But right now what I want to do is have a little talk with our bride. And I will literally go up to her, take her by the hand, and tell her, in a few minutes you're going to see him for the first time. I know that you're nervous. If you see that I'm sort of leaving you alone, it's deliberate. If you're nervous, I want to see that. You're excited, I want to see that. The most important thing that you can do for me is to forget my presence, is to let your emotions go. He's going to be coming from that direction over there. And when you see him, just let your emotions go. Have fun, and I'm going to give him a call, see where he is, okay. And he'll be coming from there. Okay, great. So have some fun, all right?
Thank you.
Okay. So basically I've just set the stage. I try to be as minimal with my words as possible. And he's not coming from that direction. He's going to be coming directly behind her. The whole idea of this is a surprise, okay? So I've already got my exposure value. Remember, really important to nail these exposures. So I'm going to give him a call. Sammy, we're pretty much ready for you. I've already explained to him, obviously this is set up for this shoot. He knows exactly what to do. On a typical wedding day, she'll be in place, I'll call, he may be taking a cab. My assistant will be waiting where the cab lets him off, and then she'll give him instructions on what to do. The most important thing is that she doesn't see him, okay? So here I am, I'm waiting, shooting. Now I'm also shooting other pictures of her just chilling. She's doing all kinds of things with her hands and everything else. And eventually, he's going to be coming. And here he comes. Now I'm going to be focused on her, on him, on her, on him, and I'm just moving it back and forth, and here's the moment about to happen. Good. Stop right there 1 second. One of the things that I want to point out before we go any further is the fact that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the thing that excites me the most about this time of day is that the sun is more angled, okay, as opposed to higher in the sky. It's down a little bit, and now I'm able to get this from my client right here, the way this light hits their face. So the reason I stopped everything is because my exposure value just changed. Why did my exposure value just change? Because this highlight became apparent. We're able to see it. So what I had to do was I had to speed my shutter speed up to the point where this highlight wasn't blown out. So when he was behind her, try it again, Sammy. When he's behind her, I'm exposing for her face right now, and I'm exposing for his face. I'm shooting her, I'm shooting him, shooting her, shooting him, just back and forth with my focus point. Recomposing, boom, 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 boom. And then, as, you could come on up, Sam. When she turns, here's that highlight. As soon as I see that, I speed my shutter up. Otherwise, my exposures are going to be off and I'm going to miss these moments. One other thing that I'd like to point out, okay? With regard to the direction of the sun right now, some of you might say, well, how can you shoot into the light? Well, I've got the shade, and even if I didn't have the shade, I'd sort of be okay. The sun is still high enough in the sky. And Anna, if you can get a picture of our couple with the sun, you can see that it's pretty darn harsh, but I am making it work. If I'm back there, okay, if we can move back just a little bit, if you notice, I'm just shooting and shooting and shooting, and I don't really need to hide from that direct sun. That's because of the angle of the sun. In our next segment at 4 o'clock, you're going to see when that sun gets a little bit lower, it may become more difficult to use. So those of you who have this misconception that later day sun is easier, not so fast, because that's when we need to start hiding from that direct sun unless we want to get flare. Well, I'd like you guys to just face me just for a second. And really both of you. You can even give me like the old American Gothic, just staring right at us. One of the things that people ask me is when they see my photos or you know, beautifully lit and they're interested to see how I do these, there's no fill flash going on here. There's no fill flash on my camera. I don't have anything but the beautiful light and the proper exposure. As you can see, we've got beautiful, even light. And in fact, you know, there's even a little almost catch light in there from reflections from other things. While it's not a studio catch light, we don't have dead eyes in Sarah's eyes. So I just want to make the point that while there's no fill flash, we still have beautiful, evenly lit faces here. Very important to point out. And the answer to your question is no, in these scenes, I don't need fill flash and I don't use fill flash. I'd be remiss if I didn't point something out. You may notice that when I talk about my settings and I talk about my aperture value, you might think that I'm out of my freaking mind because I shoot wide open almost all the time. And I do shoot wide open almost all the time. It's a personal choice. Some of you might have an 18-200 and it's 5.6. Perfectly acceptable. I like the shallow depth of field that I'm going to get at 2.8. There are times, okay, when the bride and groom see each other for the first time, that I may switch to f4. If they're on different planes, and if you guys can face each other one more time, okay, and if Sammy is a little bit this way and Sarah is a little bit this way and you face each other one more time, okay, I'm not going to shoot at 2.8. Just the sheer difference in focal plane is going to make me switch to f4. And I think that will be enough, given the fact that I'm a fair distance from them, to give me two sharp subjects. So I never say never, but I very seldom take it off of 2.8. But there are absolutely certain times that it's necessary. All right, Sammy, go for it. And again, one other thing I want to point out. To make her, and to continue the surprise, I might do something like this, just kind of looking in the other direction to fool her so that she's indeed still expecting him to come from there. And then when he actually sneaks up behind her, it's really a surprise. If you have a videographer with you, make sure that you tell him or her that you really don't want to give it away, so that he might be, you know, so excited. He'll be sitting there like this, and that's going to give it away. So it has to be a very subtle move when you see them. You don't want to get too excited. So let's try it again. Sammy, you can stay there for a second. One of the other things I'll point out that might be a problem, you see we have a van parked there right in the background. One of the reasons I use this lens right here, it's not just because I like it, it's not just because, you know, it's a Nikkor or anything like that. It's a long lens and it allows me to isolate my composition. When that van was still there, all I had to do was squat down a little bit and I removed the van from the frame. I can stand up a little bit now because it's not there. So if we move back a little bit, move back with me, Adam, here. Okay, I'm shooting, my exposure value right now is a 6/40th at 2.8, okay? And Sammy's gonna sneak up behind her. Sarah's gonna pretend to be surprised. And then watch what happens when they face each other. Highlight, I just sped the shutter speed up to a 1/1600th at 2.8. And they're just making pictures for me, guys. I'm gonna give a quick little check. My highlights are not blown out. And I'm making some beautiful photographs. The best thing about what I'm doing right now is that I'm not having them interact for me. They're just talking to each other, interacting with each other, showing me who they really are. And I'm just making pictures. Another thing I'm gonna point out, the reason we see this highlight is because it's juxtaposed with a darker area behind them. If we don't see that disparity in exposure, we lose this wonderful little highlight. That's what I'm looking for. That's why at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we're able to use the texture, dimension, and mood from this incredible light, that sun thing that's up at 2 o'clock in the sky. It's easy to use. It's not difficult. Exposure, exposure, exposure. Make it innate, and it's going to work. These two lovebirds are still going at it, okay? And I didn't say a word, but remember, on the first few moments that they're seeing each other, it's real and it's magic. You may have clients say to you, okay, now what do you want us to do? Well, you know you're screwed at that point because you're going to have dead groom walk and you're going to have dead bride. But that's beside the point. The dirty little secret, we're only as good as our clients. And I'd love to shoot Sammy and Sarah's wedding, that's for sure. The chemistry is great. So I hope you learned something there on how to use 2 o'clock sun.